Welcome back to Liberty Coin History, where every old coin has a story, and sometimes an ordinary-looking coin hiding in a collection, an old jar, or a forgotten box can be far more interesting than it first appears. Today, we are starting a brand new top 3 coins journey, and our first coin is a 1956 Lincoln Wheat Penny from the United States of America. At first glance, this particular example may not look impressive at all. It is in bad, worn condition, with the kind of surface that might make someone quickly dismiss it as nothing more than an old penny. But here is where coin collecting gets fascinating. A coin does not have to look beautiful to deserve a closer examination. The date, mint mark, condition, variety, errors, and overall history can all influence collector interest. So before you throw an old 1956 penny into a jar or spend it without thinking, stay with us, because we are going to take a closer look at what makes this little copper coin worth investigating. The 1956 Wheat Penny was produced at the Denver Mint, and the small letter D beneath the date is the important mint mark that identifies its origin. The Lincoln Wheat cent itself is one of the most recognizable coins in American collecting, featuring Abraham Lincoln on the obverse and the famous wheat ears on the reverse. By 1956, the Wheat Penny series was approaching its final years, because the classic wheat reverse would disappear after 1958 and be replaced by the Lincoln Memorial reverse in 1959. That means a 1956 cent belongs to the closing chapter of the historic wheat penny era. When you hold one today, you are holding a coin from a period when the familiar wheat design was still circulating in everyday American commerce. Even a heavily worn example can therefore carry historical appeal, especially when collectors enjoy assembling complete day-10 mint mark sets. Now let us talk about the condition of our first coin, because this example is described as a bad condition coin. You may see heavy wear, dark surfaces, scratches, discoloration, dirt, or other signs of decades of circulation. To a casual observer, that might make the coin look almost worthless, but collectors know that condition is only one part of the equation. A worn coin generally will not command the same premium as a brilliant, sharply detailed example, but age, variety, rarity, errors, and demand can still make an old coin worth examining. One of the biggest mistakes new collectors make is assuming that every dirty coin is automatically rare, while another mistake is assuming that every worn coin is worthless. The truth lies somewhere in between. You have to identify the coin correctly first, then examine its details before making any judgment about its potential value. And this is where the mint mark becomes especially important. On a 1956 Lincoln Wheat Penny, the presence of the D tells us that the coin was struck at Denver. When searching through old wheat pennies, collectors often separate coins by date and mint mark because different facilities produce different quantities, and certain dates or varieties can attract stronger demand than others. But remember, simply seeing a D does not automatically turn a normal 1956 D penny into a fortune. There are many ordinary 1956 D cents, and most circulated examples are collectible primarily because of their age and place in the wheat penny series. The exciting part is discovering whether your particular coin has something unusual about it. That means looking carefully rather than relying on the date alone. So what should you examine on a worn 1956 D wheat penny? Start with the date. Even when the coin is heavily circulated, make sure the numbers are correctly identified. Next, inspect the area beneath the date for the D mint mark. Then turn the coin over and study the wheat stalks, lettering, and overall design. Look for unusual doubling, strange shapes, missing details, cracks, die characteristics, or other abnormalities. However, be extremely careful because damage caused by circulation, cleaning, scratches, corrosion, or environmental exposure can sometimes look like a mint error to an inexperienced collector. A genuine mint-made variety is different from damage that happened decades later. This is why serious collectors use magnification, compare coins with trusted references, and sometimes seek professional opinions before claiming that a coin is a major rarity. There is also something special about the history behind this little penny. Imagine the number of hands a 1956 wheat penny could have passed through during its life. It may have been used to buy something from a local store, carried in a pocket, dropped on a sidewalk, placed inside a cash register, or saved by someone who simply liked old coins. Decades later, it could end up in a collection or inside an inherited coin jar. That journey is part of what makes coin collecting so fascinating. Every circulated coin carries evidence of its pass through its wear and surfaces. A bad condition coin may not have the dazzling appearance of an uncirculated specimen, but its worn details can actually remind us that this coin spent years participating in everyday American life. Another important point is that you should never clean an old coin just because it looks dirty. This is especially important when dealing with collectible wheat pennies. Cleaning, polishing, rubbing, or using chemicals can permanently damage the original surface and potentially reduce collector appeal. What looks like dirt might actually be natural tunning or an aged surface, and removing it can do more harm than good. If you discover an old 1956 penny, handle it carefully by the edges and avoid aggressive cleaning. If you believe it might have an unusual variety or error, preserving the coin in its current condition is usually much safer than trying to make it look shiny. Remember, collectors generally prefer original surfaces over a coin that has been harshly cleaned. Now comes the question everyone is waiting for. Could a worn 1956 wheat penny make you rich? The realistic answer is that you should not assume it will. Most circulated 1956 wheat pennies are not million-dollar coins simply because they are old. Viral coin videos sometimes make ordinary coins sound like guaranteed fortunes, but real coin collecting requires identification, grading, research, and evidence. A coin's value can vary dramatically depending on its condition and whether it has a genuine recognized variety or error. Auction records for exceptional coins should not be treated as the value of every worn example. So if you own a 1956 wheat penny like the one in today's video, the smartest approach is not to believe an unbelievable price immediately, but to inspect it carefully and learn exactly what you have. And here is another reason this coin deserves attention. The Wheat Penny series ended in 1958, making the 1956 part of the final stretch of one of America's most beloved coin designs. The wheat reverse had been introduced in 1909, the same year the Lincoln cent debuted, and it remained on the penny for nearly half a century. During that time, the United States experienced enormous historical changes, including 2 world wars, the Great Depression, and the transformation of American society. A 1956 cent, therefore, represents the final era of a design that had already become deeply familiar to generations of Americans. When you see those 2 wheat ears on the reverse, you are looking at a design that connects this little coin to decades of American history. For anyone searching through old coins, the lesson from this first coin is simple: slow down and look closely. Do not judge an old penny entirely by its appearance. A dirty or badly worn coin may be common, or it may contain a feature worth investigating. Check the date, check the mint mark, examine both sides, and compare unusual details with reliable numismatic information. If the coin appears particularly unusual, professional authentication or grading may be worth considering. Most importantly, do not let dramatic internet claims convince you that every old penny is secretly worth a fortune. The real excitement comes from discovering exactly what makes a particular coin special and understanding the history behind it. So our first coin in today's Top 3 Coins video is the 1956 Lincoln Wheat Penny, a coin that may look rough and ordinary because of its bad condition, but it still deserves a place under the collector's magnifying glass. Its Denver mint mark, classic wheat reverse, age, and connection to the final years of the wheat cent series make it an interesting piece of American numismatic history. And remember, this is only coin number 1. We have two more coins coming up, and they may bring even more interesting dates, mint marks, designs, and collecting possibilities. If you have a 1956 D wheat penny sitting somewhere in an old collection, take another look before you dismiss it. You never know what detail you might discover. Now we move to coin number 2 in our top 3 coins journey, and this time we have another classic American wheat penny, the 1957 D Lincoln Wheat Penny from the United States of America. At first glance, this coin may look like just another old copper cent, especially if it has spent decades circulating through pockets, cash registers, drawers, and coin jars. But for collectors, the date and mint mark immediately make it worth a closer look. The small D mint mark beneath the date tells us that this penny was struck at the Denver Mint. And because 1957 comes just 2 years before the famous wheat reverse was replaced by the Lincoln Memorial design in 1959, this coin belongs to the final chapter of one of America's most iconic coin series. So don't scroll away just yet, because there are several details you should understand before deciding whether your 1957 D wheat penny is simply an old cent or a coin worth adding to your collection. The 1957 D Lincoln Wheat Penny carries the familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln on the front, with the words "In God We Trust" above his head and "Liberty" beside him. Directly below the portrait is the date, 1957, and underneath that you can find the important Denver D mint mark. Flip the coin over and you will see the classic wheat ears surrounding the words 1 cent and United States of America. The reverse also includes the famous phrase, EPLURIBUS This design had been part of American coinage since 1909 and had become one of the most recognizable images in U.S. numismatics. Every 1957, D cent therefore represents the final years of a design that had already been circulating for almost 5 decades. One of the most interesting things about this coin is its place in history. By 1957, the wheat penny had already survived enormous changes in the United States. The design had been introduced during the early 20th century, and over the following decades, Americans had experienced economic crises, world wars, technological advances, and major changes in everyday life. By the time this 1957 D cent entered circulation, the wheat penny was nearing the end of its long journey. Just 2 years later, the United States Mint would introduce the Lincoln Memorial reverse, bringing the wheat penny era to an end. That makes the 1957 D a fascinating transitional coin for anyone who enjoys collecting the history behind American money. Now let's talk about condition, because condition can make a huge difference when evaluating an old penny. If your 1957 D wheat penny is heavily circulated, you may notice worn lettering, flattened wheat stalks, scratches, dark tunning, discoloration, or other surface marks. A worn coin generally will not have the same collector value as a sharply detailed, original uncirculated example, but that does not mean a circulated coin should automatically be thrown away. The first step is always identification. Confirm the date, confirm the D mint mark, examine both sides, and then look for anything unusual. Collectors often enjoy circulated wheat pennies because they are affordable pieces of history and can be used to build complete daytime mint collections. And this is where your magnifying glass can become your best friend. Take your 1957 D penny and carefully inspect the date and mint mark. Look at the lettering around the coin and study Lincoln's portrait. On the reverse, examine the wheat ears, lettering, and spacing. You are looking for unusual characteristics that could potentially indicate a recognized variety or mint-made error. But there is an important warning. Not every strange-looking mark is an error. Scratches, dents, corrosion, chemical damage, and normal circulation can create shapes that look unusual. A genuine mint error or variety needs to be identified using reliable numismatic references, and when necessary, authenticated by an experienced professional. Another mistake people make is thinking that a dirty wheat penny should immediately be cleaned to reveal its hidden value. please don't make that mistake. If you find a 1957 D cent with dark or dirty-looking surfaces, resist the temptation to polish it. Cleaning can leave scratches and unnatural surfaces that may permanently affect the coin's collector appeal. Even if the coin looks unattractive, its original surface can be important. Handle it gently by the edges, keep it in a suitable holder, and avoid household chemicals or abrasive materials. In coin collecting, shiny does not automatically mean valuable, and an old coin with its original surfaces is often more desirable than one that has been aggressively cleaned. Now let's ask the question that everybody loves. Is the 1957 D wheat penny rare? The answer requires some caution. A 1957 D cent by itself should not automatically be considered a rare fortune coin. There were many examples produced, and ordinary circulated specimens are generally collected as common wheat cents. However, condition, recognized varieties, errors, and exceptional preservation can change the picture. This is why you should never value a coin simply by looking at a sensational headline online. A dramatic auction price for an exceptional example does not mean every 1957 D penny is worth the same amount. The exact coin in your hand matters. The beauty of this hobby is that you don't need to own an extremely rare coin to enjoy collecting. A 1957 D wheat penny can be an important part of a complete Lincoln Wheat cent collection. Imagine having examples from different decades and different U.S. mint facilities, arranged chronologically in a collection. You can watch the designs, mint marks, dates, and condition change as you move through the series. The 1957 D becomes especially interesting because it is near the end of the wheat reverse era. For many collectors, that historical connection is just as exciting as the possibility of finding a valuable variety. There is also a story hidden in the wear of a circulated 1957 D penny. Every scratch and worn detail represents part of the coin's journey after leaving the mint. We cannot know exactly where your particular coin traveled, but it could have been spent by an American family more than half a century ago, carried across different places, saved for a while, and eventually forgotten in a collection. That little copper cent may have passed through countless transactions before someone finally noticed its date and mint mark. This is one of the reasons coin collecting is so addictive. You are not simply collecting metal, you are collecting pieces of history. If you discover a 1957 D wheat penny, don't immediately assume it is either worthless or extremely valuable. Instead, take a collector's approach. Identify it carefully, examine its condition, look for unusual characteristics, compare it with trustworthy references, and preserve it properly. If something appears genuinely unusual, consider having the coin examined by a qualified numismatist or professional grading service. A professional opinion can help distinguish a legitimate variety or error from ordinary damage. This approach may not be as exciting as believing every old penny is a hidden fortune, but it is the best way to become a knowledgeable collector. And now we are getting closer to the end of today's Top 3 Coins adventure. Our first coin was the 1956 D wheat penny, and now coin number 2 is the 1957 D wheat penny. Notice something interesting. Both coins come from the final years of the wheat penny era, and both carry the Denver D mint mark. These dates give collectors an opportunity to explore the closing chapter of one of America's most famous coin designs. The next coin will bring another opportunity to examine a different piece of American coin history, so make sure you stay until the end because you don't want to miss coin number 3. Before we reveal the final coin, take a moment to check your own coin collection. Search through old jars, inherited collections, boxes, and albums. If you find a 1957 D wheat penny, don't just look at the date and put it away. Inspect the mint mark, study the condition, and carefully examine both sides under good lighting. You might discover nothing extraordinary, and that's perfectly fine. You will still have a genuine piece of American history from the final years of the Wheat Penny series. And if you do discover something unusual, That's when the real research begins. So there you have it. Coin number 2, the 1957 Lincoln Wheat Penny. It may look like an ordinary old penny, but behind that small copper surface is nearly 7 decades of American history and a connection to the final years of the famous wheat reverse. Remember, the presence of a D mint mark does not automatically make a coin rare, and a worn coin should never be valued based solely on internet rumors. Real coin value depends on factors such as authenticity, condition, varieties, errors, rarity, and collector demand. And now we have reached the third and final coin in today's exciting top 3 coins journey here on Liberty Coin History. And this one is especially interesting because the 1958 Lincoln Wheat Penny represents one of the very last years of the legendary wheat penny design. Our final coin is a 1958 wheat penny with no mint mark, and this particular example is a dirty, circulated coin. At first glance, it may look like nothing more than an old, worn copper penny that has spent decades forgotten in a drawer or coin jar. But don't be too quick to dismiss it. The year 1958 is important because the classic wheat reverse was approaching the end of its long run. Just 1 year later, in 1959, the United States Mint would replace the wheat ears reverse with the Lincoln Memorial design. That makes a 1958 wheat penny one of the final regular issues of an iconic American coin design, and that historical connection alone makes it a fascinating piece for collectors. Let's begin with the most obvious feature, the 1958 date. When you look at the front of the coin, you will see Abraham Lincoln's portrait, with "In God We Trust" above him and "Liberty" beside the portrait. Below Lincoln is the date 1958. Underneath the date, there is no letter, which means this particular coin has no mint mark. For Lincoln's sense of this era, a no mint mark coin indicates production at the Philadelphia Mint. That small detail is one of the first things collectors check when identifying an old wheat penny. So when you find a 1958 cent without a mint mark, you are looking at a Philadelphia issue from one of the final years of the wheat penny era. Now turn the coin over because this is where the real historical character appears. The reverse features the famous 2 wheat ears, with 1 cent in the center and United States of America around it. Above the denomination is the traditional motto, EPLURIBUSUNUM. This reverse design had been used on Lincoln cents since 1909 and had become deeply connected with American coin collecting. But by 1958, the design was almost finished. The following year, the Mint would introduce the Lincoln Memorial reverse, ending nearly 50 years of the wheat penny design. So although the 1958 no mint mark cent may look ordinary, it belongs to one of the most historically interesting periods in the Lincoln cent series. Now let's talk about the condition of today's example. You described this coin as a dirty coin, and that immediately tells us that its appearance may not be impressive. It might have dark tunning, dirt, discoloration, scratches, worn lettering, or other evidence of long circulation. The wheat ears may be partially worn, and some of Lincoln's facial details may have disappeared through years of use. But remember one of the most important lessons in coin collecting. Never judge an old coin only by how dirty it looks. A dirty coin can still be historically interesting, and sometimes a worn coin can contain a variety or error that deserves investigation. Condition certainly matters when determining value, but it is not the only factor collectors consider. However, there is an important warning for anyone who discovers a dirty 1958 wheat penny. Don't clean it. It can be very tempting to take an old penny and polish it until it shines, especially when the surface looks dark or unattractive. But aggressive cleaning can scratch the coin, remove its natural surface, and negatively affect its collector appeal. Never use household cleaners, metal polish, abrasive materials, or rough cloths on a collectible coin. If the coin has original tunning or an aged surface, that appearance can actually be part of its history. The safest approach is usually to leave the coin alone, handle it carefully by the edges, and store it in a proper holder. So, could a 1958 no-mint mark wheat penny be worth a fortune? This is where we need to separate exciting possibilities from realistic collecting. A normal circulated 1958 Philadelphia wheat penny is not automatically a rare or extremely valuable coin simply because it is old. Many were produced, and common circulated examples are generally affordable wheat cents. But that does not mean you should ignore one. The coin becomes more interesting if it has an authentic mint error, recognized variety, unusual condition, or other characteristics that make it different from a normal example. The key is identification. Never assume that a sensational price shown online applies to every 1958 penny. One of the most exciting things to check is the possibility of unusual mint-made characteristics. Under magnification, examine the date, lettering, Lincoln's portrait, and the reverse design. Look for strange doubling, unusual die characteristics, cracks, or other features that appear to have been created during the minting process. But be careful. Damage is not the same thing as a mint error. A scratch from circulation, corrosion, a dent, or environmental damage can create unusual-looking shapes. Before calling a coin a rare error, compare it with reliable references and, if necessary, have it examined by someone experienced in Lincoln cents. The goal is not simply to find something strange. The goal is to determine whether that feature is genuinely collectible. There is another reason the 1958 date makes this coin exciting. It is part of the final year of the wheat penny design before the 1959 change. Think about that for a moment. The wheat penny had been around since 1909, and millions of Americans had used it for almost half a century. The 1958 cent was produced at the end of that remarkable era. When the 1959 Lincoln Memorial Cent arrived, the classic wheat ears disappeared from regular U.S. circulation. That means a 1958 wheat penny is not simply another date in a long series. It is part of the closing chapter of a design that had become a symbol of American coin collecting. And this brings us to the bigger lesson from today's three coins. Our first coin was the 1956 D wheat penny. Our second was the 1957 D wheat penny. And now our final coin is the 1958 no mint mark wheat penny. All three belong to the final years of the wheat penny era. Two carry the Denver D mint mark, while the 1958 example has no mint mark, identifying it as a Philadelphia issue. Looking at these coins together gives collectors a fascinating miniature timeline of the final years before the wheat reverse disappeared. Even if these particular examples are worn or dirty, they can still tell a powerful story about American coinage. If you are searching through old pennies at home, this is exactly why you should slow down. Don't automatically throw away a dark 1958 wheat penny because it doesn't look shiny. First, confirm the date, check whether there is a mint mark, inspect the surfaces, and examine both sides carefully. If you see something unusual, take clear photographs and compare the coin with trustworthy numismatic references. And remember that a coin's appearance can be misleading. A beautiful coin is not necessarily rare, and a dirty coin is not necessarily worthless. The real skill in coin collecting is learning how to identify what you actually have. There is also something incredibly satisfying about holding a coin that has survived for so many decades. Your 1958 wheat penny may have been spent by someone during a completely different era of American life. It could have traveled through stores, homes, pockets, banks, and coin collections before eventually reaching you. The scratches and worn surfaces are evidence that this little piece of copper had a life long before it entered your collection. For collectors, that connection to the past can be more meaningful than a simple price tag. Coins are miniature historical objects, and the stories they carry are one of the greatest reasons people become passionate about numismatics. So after looking at all three coins, our final message is simple. Check your old wheat pennies carefully, but stay realistic about value. The 1958 no-mint mark wheat penny is historically fascinating because it comes from the closing year of the classic wheat reverse, but a normal dirty circulated example should not automatically be considered a fortune. Authenticity, condition, rarity, varieties, mint errors, and collector demand all matter. If you think your example has something genuinely unusual, professional evaluation can help determine whether that feature is real and whether the coin deserves special attention. Never clean it just to make it look newer, and never trust an unbelievable valuation without evidence. And that's where we close today's Top 3 Coins episode on Liberty Coin History. We traveled through three fascinating wheat pennies: the 1956D, the 1957D, and finally the 1958 no-mint mark Philadelphia issue. These coins may look old, worn, or dirty, but together they represent the final chapter of one of America's most famous coin designs. If you enjoyed this journey, make sure you like this video, subscribe to Liberty Coin History, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our next coin discovery. And tell us in the comments, which of these three wheat pennies would you most want to find in your collection? The 1956D, 1957D, or 1958 no-mint mark? Keep checking those old coin jars, keep learning about mint marks and varieties, and remember, sometimes the most interesting treasure is hiding in the coin you almost decided to ignore.